I'm not a man. I believe that I have a right as any other woman to compete as a woman.
The battle between South Africa's multiple world and Olympic champion, Caster Semenya, and track and field's governing body, World Athletics, continues. In an interview with Sally Nugent of BBC Sports Breakfast, Semenya says that her life now has a different purpose.
My future is to fight for injustice, fight for inclusivity, diverse. I'm a woman. I have a vagina just like any other woman. I always knew that, you know what, I'm a different girl. I like, different kind of things. I know I'm a woman. I don't really care about, the medical terms, what they tell me, my testosterone, being born, without the uterus, being born with internal testicles. Those don't make me less a woman. It's just the differences that I was born with, and I embrace them. I'm not going to be, I'm not going to feel ashamed because I'm different. I'm different, I feel special, and I'm great about it. The importance of women's sports is not being taken seriously, and we as a women, I think we need to take charge of our own bodies. We need to decide what is the right.
Well, to discuss this latest development, we have our in-house track and field analyst, Leighton Levy. Leighton, welcome to the SportsMax zone.
Good to be back again, Maria. Nice colors today.
Thank you so much, Leighton. So we'll start by talking about Caster Semenya, that soundbite we just heard, saying she's not afraid to be different. As a matter of fact, she's embracing that fact, and she's going to, not focus on track and field anymore, but ensure that no other athlete that is different like she is ever feels as discriminated.
Yeah, look, this is a situation that comes with many layers. Huh? There is the issue of gender definition, and then there is also the situation of how that situation has been managed by World Athletics, and then there is a matter of race. As simple as it may sound, when you look at all of the athletes who have been declared DSD, they're from Africa. You check it out. Semenya, Christine Mboma, Masalingi, Nayan Saba, Wambui, Senye, all of them are from Africa. So it brings into play a lot of dynamics here, which we have to then sort out in a way that makes sense for everybody. Caster Semenya has run as a woman all her life. She was gender tested in 2012, and the IAAF, or World Athletics now, declared that she's a woman. And then they changed the rules again and said that she couldn't compete unless she took medication to reduce her testosterone levels. Then they allowed Mboma to run at the Olympics in 2021. Then they said she can't run again unless she reduces her testosterone levels. World Athletics keeps moving the goalposts on these athletes, which I think is unfair, which is the injustice that I think a lot of them are experiencing. Because if there is a definitive determination of where they should compete, whether or not they're competing as women or they're competing as men, or for me, what is the ultimate solution is have them compete in their own category. And then once you determine, you have those determinations, I think this problem goes away, because then it's more inclusive, and it doesn't marginalize any one athlete or the other, regardless of the gender.
Right, and Leighton, you say that, and I instantly remember in the interview she was talking about taking this drug, of course, can endanger her life. Taking the medication, of course, to lower her testosterone, she felt as if could be harmful, and I'd love to hear your take on that, because, yeah, you tell me to take these medication to lower my testosterone, but what if there are side effects? What if it affects me negatively?
That's the thing, because on one hand, WADA and the World Athletics is telling you, don't take performance-enhancing drugs. But then they're telling these particular set of athletes to take drugs to reduce their performance levels. Let me just draw a comparison to you for that to put things in perspective. Because I know there are a lot of people out there who are thinking that, Semenya shouldn't be allowed to compete, period.
Many people think so.
Her personal best is 154.25. Just this year, I think more around 154.97. That's about what? 0.5 seconds difference. If you look at, for example, take Usain Bolt, 9.58. For the last 2 years, nobody's come within three-tenths of a second of that world record. The reality is that there are sometimes athletes who just have this particular talent that makes them a lot better than everybody else. So the determination of whether or not she's so much better than the rest of the world is not a factor because it's within the realm of normality. Nobody's complaining about the world record of 153 that's over 30 years old, and nobody's come close to breaking. But they're having an issue with Semenya because she's run faster than everybody else running at 800 meters, even though the differences are not that stark. So it's one of those issues that I think World Athletics need to come and make a definitive decision about what happens with these athletes and stop moving the goalposts on them.
All right, you just recommended the answer eventually, as problematic as it is, which we all recognize, would be to have them in a category. Do you think Semenya would be comfortable with that? Because I don't think, given her stance, that she feels she should be prevented from running in women's races, because as she just declared there in the soundbite we heard, that she is a woman.
Yeah, but she's a woman with differences, which she's also acknowledged.
Yes.
So if you have a category, for example, with DSD athletes, right, the parameters would not be that far apart in terms of what is considered normal from what is not normal. Then she could compete as a woman, because there will be women who are competing as athletes of different sexual development. So the category would be, it would allow her to compete.
I hear you, but I'm not sure if that route would satisfy someone like Semenya.
I'm not sure either, to be honest. But the thing is that at least she'd be allowed to compete and compete on equal footing. That would give her an opportunity to earn, because that's what she does for a living. And that's what she's been denied a living for the last few years. So I think once she's allowed to compete on an equal footing with other athletes of similar dispensation, I don't think she'll probably mind too much. She might have an issue with the fact that she was not specifically classified as a woman in the purest form. But at least she'll be able to compete as a woman, but a woman with different sexual development. So I think it's about how
But the thing is, are there enough of those, though, to make a category like that make sense?
I think so, but you know what? The thing is, a lot of athletes, I believe, who have similar issues don't compete because of what's happening now, because of what you see happening with Semenya and the other athletes from Africa who are having similar issues. So because of that, they're probably thinking, why do I need to put myself through this? But I believe that they're creating a category. More of them would come out, I don't want to use the word come out of the woodwork, but certainly make themselves available for competition, knowing that there's a category where they could compete on equal footing, and then there will be no judgment on them for competing the way, as Caster Semenya said, that's the way they were born. It's not like she underwent surgery to do this. This is how she was born. This is how the IAAF World Athletics classified her in 2012. So, it is what it is. They have to. What is happening right now, I think, is the wavering of the decision on how to handle these athletes from World Athletics. And I think it's how they manage it has been, in my mind, extremely poor. Because if you're going to have a situation where you're being more inclusive, you have to make tough decisions, because those decisions then eliminate the issue of the lack of inclusion or marginalization of these athletes, which then makes them feel like they're some kind of monsters or something less than human. And I think that's the part of it, that's what makes it so egregious for her, which is why she has this situation before the Human Rights International Court right now, because her rights are being abused, and that's the reality of it.
Yeah, well, Semenya has not competed in her favored 800 meters since 2019 due to regulations implemented by World Athletics that prevented women with differences of sexual development, DSO, in events below a mile. She has basically confirmed her departure from the sport of track and field.
And when I said to you, what's next for you, at no point there did you say competing.
No, competing is out of my picture. No, it's not something that I'm looking forward to. If you look at my records, you look at my my accolades, there's nothing that I don't have. At the moment, what I want to do is that to pave the way and make sure that each and every young girl out there is treated well. Their rights are being treated the way it's supposed to be. Human rights come first. They need to be treated with respect and dignity. That's what I fight for. For me, I've played my part as an athlete. There's nothing left for me on the track. If I want to run, I'll still run. If I want to do anything, I'll do. But the most important thing for me is this cause I'm doing to fight for injustice.
Leighton, what is your view on her career ending this way? What will be her legacy if we never see her again on the track?
Well, if we're being objective, she's one of the greatest 800-meter runners of all time. 2 Olympic titles, 3 world titles. Outside the world record, I think she's probably run the fastest time since that world record. Her legacy, as far as I'm concerned, is secure. I mean, I know there are a lot of people who will probably think otherwise. But the fact that she was allowed to compete as a woman because they declared her a woman, what she accomplished as a woman cannot be denied.
Yes.
That record is there and it stands and it's not being removed and it's not being scratched from the record books. So I think her legacy is secure. And I think what will enhance her legacy, I believe, is that she comes out on the positive end of this situation with World Athletics.
Yeah, the fight.
I think she will be seen as a trailblazer for somebody who made the sport better because of it, because of what she championed in terms of what she wanted to accomplish.
Yeah, one of the things she said, and I found it, really striking, is that the leaders, those in charge of the governing bodies, are actually pitting women against each other. What's your take on that?
It's a combination of two things, because one of the reasons why this came to this point right now is that there are a lot of athletes, female athletes. Well, I don't want to differentiate her, but there are a lot of athletes who used to complain that they think it's unfair, her competing against them, because they weren't winning. And then they took it up. I don't want to get into the nuances of that because I don't want to take this down the wrong road. But there's a particular type of woman who used to complain. And those, because of the type of woman who complained, they made that issue a big issue of it. Because look, I know there are a lot of athletes. I remember I was talking to a number of American 800-meter runners, and some of them actually didn't have much of a problem with her running, right? Some of them did, but there's a difference between those who did and those who didn't.
Yeah, but you alluded to it earlier on, so I don't think there's a problem getting back to it. You're talking about the Caucasian athletes.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that are complaining, and not so
For the
much
most part, yeah.
For the most part.
Yeah, because I spoke to a couple of athletes over the years when they were here in Jamaica, asked them specifically about it. And for the most part, those who really didn't have much of a problem. There are some who they weren't sure where to come down on the issue, but for the most part, you got a sense that it didn't really matter too much about the fact that she was competing against them. The ones that were complaining the loudest were the white athletes. And, when you look at, for example, I mentioned, I think more this year, 154.97. Is a really fast time. You don't hear anybody competing about it, no, because of how, I think it looks like a woman, huh? She doesn't have the testosterone levels that Semenya has. Yeah. So of course she's going to have a different body type. Of course she's going to look different. Yeah. So it's about, again, it comes on to all of this thing. There are elements of race in it for me, but look, I'm not saying that the concerns are legitimate in some respects. But then again, all of it falls back to World Athletics for then, in 2012, just over 10 years ago, determining that she's a woman. Yeah.
Just quickly before we wrap the segment, though, because in July, she won a discrimination case in the European Court of Human Rights. So she won that case, but her position still remains the same. So how frustrating is that for her?
Has to be frustrating, because then you're winning the case on one hand, but then you're still being prevented from doing something that you love. And again, as I go back, you remember that when the World Athletics rule that between 400 and 1500 is where they could compete, which is kind of contradictory to me. I'm not a scientist, but for me, to have strength and endurance is what you need to win at 400. Extra testosterone gives you that advantage, right? So why then allow them to run those events and not, for example, the shorter sprints? Because the same dynamics are involved. You know, and then when you look again, Neon Saba was allowed to run the 5,000 meters.
Yes.
Right? And then she went and set a world record in the 5,000 meters. So what's the difference? So you see, there's a lot of gray area here in terms of how they're handling this issue, because on one hand, they're banning some of the athletes, but then they're allowing others to compete at other events. So it sends a wrong message that you're not quite sure of what you're doing in terms of handling these athletes, which is why I'm suggesting that just have a category for DSD athletes, and then most of these issues go away.
Yeah, well, Leighton, what's for sure is until there is clarity, the discussion will continue. There will be a lot of, disagreements. Some will agree, some will disagree. We'll continue to follow this story very, very closely. On that note, Leighton, thank you so much for stopping by on the SportsMax Zone. We have to take a break now, but we'll be right back.